What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more iOS 17 features and changes. We're going to talk about the major news surrounding an upcoming Apple Watch and iPhone 16, why your Apple Watch might cause you to get sick, controversial app changes, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated in the world of Apple, make sure to click that subscribe button down below and also check out the Apple Den newsletter for your weekly fix of Apple news. All right, let's talk iOS 17 Beta 6. That was the release that we saw earlier this week, and there are even more new features and changes that I did not cover in my initial What's New video. And the first one, I'm going to go in here into music and play some music real quick. And if we go up to the control center, you will notice that the text is now centered in the control center music platter. So just like in iOS 16, for whatever reason, throughout iOS 17, that was to the left, but now it is centered in that platter, which I think looks better. If you head into the Messages application and tap on the plus right here, you will notice that you have a lot of third-party applications and you may not want those. Well, now in iOS 17 Beta 6, you can remove the applications just from the Messages app tray without deleting the application. So if you go into your settings and go to Messages, you have iMessage apps, and if you tap on that, you will be able to toggle on or off if you want those applications showing up in your app tray, and you don't have to delete the full application anymore. Now for this next feature, I need to pull out my main device because you have to have a SIM card for this feature to work. And that is if you go into your recents and swipe over to the left, you will see that we have a new report button. Now you can report a junk caller or like a spam caller with a swipe gesture. Before, you only had the delete button right there to delete that recent call. In the shortcuts application, if you search for SIM card, you will see that you can now turn on or off a specific cellular plan, and you can also add that into an automation. And this is just if you have multiple SIM cards on your device. In the health application, if you go into the state of mind, there are some minor changes here to the animations. So if you go over right here, you will notice these animations are just so smooth. I mean, when you just pull this slider right here, I don't know what it is, but the way these shapes change is so smooth. And that is a minor change here from Beta 6. It's just slightly different on the curves of these shapes. I didn't pick that up the first time. I even tried this out, but you basically have to look at them side by side to see the difference, but it looks awesome in Beta 6. And here's an interesting feature I just noticed in iOS 17 Beta 6. I'm pretty sure this has probably been there since iOS 17 Beta 1, but now when you go to a destination in the default Maps application, Apple Maps, when you pull up the route options, it now shows your ETA right underneath of where you're going, along with a quick button to call that destination. And when you tap on that, it doesn't even give you a pop-up, it just instantly calls them. And that is extremely convenient to have straight from within the maps in the route options section, like after you already start navigating. So that is a nice new feature in iOS 17. Also new, if you go to the lock screen and customize your wallpaper. So I'm gonna make this one a little bit smaller, and you will notice I'm gonna pinch in to make it smaller and skinnier. You will notice at the bottom we have a new label down there that says wallpaper extended. And what this does is it kind of uses AI to pick up on the colors of what you have right there. And you can see it will just kind of put this really cool color matching blur effect where that image is cut off, like it's too small, so it kind of fills in the gaps right there. And you'll see it even changes like the color of my widgets and the borders. We also have some minor changes to the music widget. So the verbiage under recently played has changed and now says find all your recently played music and see what's currently playing. And then also in the actual music app itself, if you tap on the three dots on a song, you will notice it now says go to album, whereas before it just said show album. So again, a minor change there, but that is something new in Beta 6. And then if you go into settings and go to screen time and then down to communication safety, you will notice up top here it now says sensitive photos and videos instead of just saying before it said communication safety and messages. Now, as far as bugs and bug fixes go, I honestly have not had a single bug on iOS 17 Beta 6 so far. Like, I know we're on a weekly release schedule now, so we don't have as much time to pick up on the bugs, but I haven't had one issue since Tuesday's release, which is quite impressive, but it's also not entirely surprising, because if you watched my What's New video and if you looked at the release notes, you would know that there were a ton of bug fixes in this update. Like, this is probably the biggest update yet as far as bug fixes go. So that's not surprising. And the biggest bug that has been resolved for me is the keyboard disappearing in messages. I've not had that happen one time, whereas before on every beta, I had it happen at least once per day. Now I've gone several days, and I've not had that bug. So that is a great sign for beta 6. And then of course I did run a fresh Geekbench 6 test. So we scored a 2645 on the single core compared to the day of release. It's about 10 points higher, 2635 previously. And then we scored a 6801 on the multi-core, which again, that was higher than the multi-core in our initial run for beta 6. However, these scores are lower than what we saw with beta 5. So not a big difference. Again, a lot of the feeling faster and feeling better in this update is more about the amount of bug fixes. It's going to feel more stable just because of all the bug fixes. Now, as far as the battery life goes, this is perhaps the part that surprised me the most. And maybe it shouldn't have, because I should have known with all these bug fixes that the battery life would improve. But if you remember in my What's New video, I said I would expect the battery life to improve, but probably not by much. Well, for me, on my 14 Pro, it's improved by a lot. Like, my battery life going from beta 5 to 6 has been the biggest jump in battery life performance yet. And that's saying something, because when we went from beta 3 to 4, that was a big jump. But you can see here, I have my last 24 hours. I'm gonna take a screenshot right now and I'll show you earlier as well. So this is my last 24 hours right now on my 14 Pro. And you can just see, I mean, look at those bars right there for the activity. And then my last 10 days, you'll see again, this came out on Tuesday. So we need to look from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Those are the only ones that matter for beta 6. And you can see beta 5 is before that. And then here's a screenshot I took last night, because I was really surprised at how long my phone stayed alive. Take a look at this. I only charged my phone for like, what is that, like less than an hour from 3 to 4 p.m. And we're talking about a full 24-hour span on this chart right here. And you can see battery life stood up really well. I mean, for a beta, you would not think that's a beta if you just looked at this battery chart right there. So battery life on beta 6, at least for me, has been phenomenal. All right, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. And next up is iOS 17 beta 7, along with public beta 5. And I would expect that to come next week on the week of the 21st. Again, we should see that on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, most likely the 22nd or the 23rd. And then after that is where it gets a little bit tricky. We could have beta 8 on the week of the 28th. And then after beta 8, we'll most likely skip 2 weeks and we'll have a release on the week of the 11th. And then the final release of iOS 17 on the week of the 18th, or right there on the 18th itself. Okay, so before we get to the main news segment of this video, let's talk about some more iOS kind of software related news. And the first thing I want to talk about is iOS 17.1. Yes, iOS 17.1 is currently in development. This was seen by 9to5Mac in their analytics, and it looks like Apple is testing that out right now, and that should come out most likely in October. Now, they also reported that Apple is not planning an iOS 16.6.1, and they're going to go straight to iOS 16.7, just as we anticipated here on the channel a few weeks back. So I would expect this release to be similar to what we saw last year, where there's no beta, there's kind of just an RC and then the final release. But I would expect that at some point in September. Now, also this past week, we did get the release of watchOS 9.6.1. This was released alongside iOS 17 betas this week, and this fixed an API related issue. It was a really small update, but we did also get macOS Ventura 13.5.1 on Thursday to fix an issue in system settings that prevented location permissions from appearing. This was a big issue that I talked about in Apple Weekly last week. Now, I did also want to talk about the Apple Card and the installment plans, the interest-free installment plans, and it looks like now Apple is not allowing you to do that if you buy a SIM-free iPhone. It looks like you have to do a plan with AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile in order to take advantage of the Apple Card monthly installments. I did also want to touch on the controversial change potentially coming to the X or Twitter application, and that is that Elon Musk is looking to get rid of the block feature except for in DMs. So he says block is going to be deleted as a feature except for DMs, and he followed that up with "it makes no sense." Now you can see my response down there as a hot take. A lot of people agree agree with it. A lot of people don't agree with it. That's why it's a hot take, but I'm not going to discuss that here in this video. But what's interesting here is that it looks like the app stores, the App Store and the Google Play Store, require social media apps to have a block button. So it's going to be interesting to see if he actually goes through with this and if the app stores kind of bend their rules because it's Elon Musk and the X application. So what do you think about this? Do you think that the blocking feature needs to stay, or do you think that muting somebody is enough? Because honestly, if people are going to harass people, they're going to make alternate accounts anyway to do that. So I don't know. I can see both sides of it, but what do you guys think? And on the flip side of X or Twitter, we have Threads, which is not as controversial. But anyway, they just rolled out a couple of new features. So you can see here it says that reposts now show on your profile. So you can see all the threads that you reposted in one place. And also, he says, based on feedback, they're adding reposts to your following feed. So now if you go to your home feed and tap and go to following, it will show people's reposts or retweets. And I guess we're just going to talk about every social media app because we also need to talk about TikTok and how that just got banned in New York City for city-owned devices. So it looks like they are now required, agencies are now required to remove the application within the next 30 days. And this is due to TikTok posing a security threat to the city's technical networks. So pretty interesting. It seems like there are quite a few cities now or states that have banned TikTok from, government-owned devices or city-owned devices. And then the final app update, I promise, is going to be about WhatsApp. And that is that they now added the feature to let users send HD or high definition photos instead of compressing the images down to 960 by 1280 like they did before. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And first up, we need to talk about the Apple Watch and how there's going to be a major redesign within the next couple of years that could make your watch bands pretty much useless. So this news comes from Mark Gurman, and he says that Apple is planning to completely revamp the Apple Watch in honor of its 10-year anniversary, just like they did for the iPhone 10. So it looks like Apple is considering a magnetic band attachment system for this watch, and it's also rumored to have the micro LED display that we've heard about for quite a while now, which has better color and clarity than OLED screens. And this might also be the very first watch to feature blood pressure monitoring, which would be a massive deal, a big deal for Apple. So that could happen. And he did also say that since the Apple Watch was unveiled in 2014 and launched in 2015, he's unsure if the Apple Watch X is going to be released in 2024 or 2025. So of course, we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But this is gonna be a major change. And since we're talking about future products, we may as well stay on trend and talk about the iPhone 16. Yes, the 16, the 15's not out yet, but as a yearly tradition, we have iPhone 16 news. And this comes from 9to5Mac, who says that the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max will feature Wi-Fi 7. So Wi-Fi 7 devices are gonna be able to send and receive data over 2.4, 5, and now 6 gigahertz bands simultaneously. They're also saying that the Pro models will have an upgraded 48 megapixel ultra wide camera lens. So this is going to allow the ultra wide lens to capture more light, like when you're shooting in 0.5x. And then we've also heard that the iPhone 16 Pro Max could be the very first phone to feature a super telephoto periscope camera for dramatically increased optical zoom. So that would be big, but of course we're still so far out there, who knows if that's going to happen. Although I will say that leakers on X are saying to wait for the 16 series, but isn't that how it is every year? I mean, just I'll wait for next year every year. I don't know. And then the final next iPhone we're going to talk about is the iPhone SE 4. And this thing's probably not coming until 2025, so do not get your hopes up. I don't see this coming next year even, but we do have some rumors about this as well, as pointed out by Unknowns21 on Twitter. He said these things. So the design is going to be based on the iPhone 14. It's going to ditch the home button for Face ID. It's going to be just like all future iPhones with USB-C. There's going to allegedly be an action button to replace the mute switch, which that's the only one I'm kind of on the fence about. I don't know if that's actually going to happen for a budget device, but I guess we'll see. And then he also says it's going to have only one rear camera. Now, we have also heard that this could be the first iPhone or one of the first iPhones to have Apple's custom 5G chip inside. All right, so enough of those future Apple products. Let's talk about what's coming next month, because we have some new news and kind of reports surrounding the iPhone 15 that aren't the most positive. And this comes from Jeff Poo, as reported by 9to5Mac, and he's saying that Apple is expected to build 77 million iPhone 15s by the end of this year compared to 83 million, which was previously estimated. And he's saying this is due to supply issues with Sony's camera sensors, the new titanium frame for the Pro models, and the new display with thinner bezels. So it looks like demand could be pretty low, especially if we have those price increases like we're expecting to see this year. So I don't think that we're going to have any, delays. We've heard a lot about delays, but I don't think there's going to be a delay, but we could have a shortage, especially for the Pro models, like if you don't order right away. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, also 9to5Mac reported that the iPhone 15 is going to be able to charge at up to 35 watts. And for comparison, the 14 Pro charges at 27 watts and the regular 14 is charging at 20 watts. So 35 watts is going to be a nice jump in terms of speed of charging up the phone. Now, we did also hear rumors that Apple is not going to be selling their leather case for the iPhone 15 series this year, which I find that to be really interesting because I'm assuming that is a very high margin product for them and it always sells well. So my only guess here, if they actually do not sell this leather case, is that they probably have a new design or a new material that they're going to come out with for the 15 series. I can't see them just dropping the leather case. Okay, so now let's talk about your Apple Watch band. If you have an Apple Watch, you could actually be getting sick because of your Apple Watch band. Let me explain. So a new study from FAU, Florida Atlantic University, found that 95% of Apple Watch bands that they tested contained harmful bacteria. As a matter of fact, 85% of the bands included bacteria that can lead to staph infections. And even worse, 30% of the bands had this bacteria, which the CDC confirms can lead to conditions like pneumonia. And then 60% of these bands contained E. coli bacteria, commonly associated with fecal-oral transmission. Disgusting. And then further diving into the data, it was revealed that participants who wore their devices during workouts at the gym had the highest bacterial counts. And they said that in particular, those who went to the gym frequently displayed the highest count of the staph infection bacteria. And this kind of just shows the importance of cleaning your watch band after engaging in intense physical activities like going to the gym. And then as for the band materials, they said that cloth, rubber, and plastic bands were the biggest culprits of carrying bacteria, whereas the metal bands had the least amount of bacteria. And that's likely just because they are less likely to be worn during exercise or when you go to the gym. Now, Apple does have a support document outlining the recommended cleaning methods and just how to clean your Apple Watch. So I would highly recommend taking a look at that if you wear your Apple Watch to the gym, because you probably have some really nasty bacteria on there that you do not want to be close to your face. Okay, so now let's talk about how crash detection saved another life. This time, it was a 21-year-old musician who was involved in a really bad car accident. And because she had an iPhone 14 with crash detection, it instantly detected the collision and alerted first responders and also her emergency contacts. And since this was instant, she was able to be airlifted to the hospital where she was admitted to the ER with a broken femur, multiple broken femurs, and a broken pelvis, along with cranial and cervical spine fractures and substantial blood loss requiring blood transfusions. So clearly a near-death experience that likely would have been deadly if she did not have that iPhone 14 that made that call instantly once she got in that collision, because those are really bad injuries. And kind of a cool way to view this story, kind of a positive way to view this story, is that despite her car being mangled and just like destroyed to no end, her ukulele somehow survived unscathed. So I think that's kind of a sign that she's going to be okay, and hopefully she can play music again in the future once she's done with all those surgeries and recovery. Again, guys, make sure you have crash detection enabled if you have an iPhone 14, or if you're going to get an iPhone 15. Turn that feature on instantly. You never know when you'll need it. And also set up your emergency contacts as well so they know what's going on. And then, of course, just like every episode, we have to talk about another crazy AirTag story. This one's not really crazy. It's kind of just a reminder of what to do in these situations and kind of just what can happen out there in this crazy world. So anyway, a woman went to a concert in West Virginia this past week, and presumably the next day she got an alert that an unknown AirTag had been following her home and also to her place of work. So she said that her sister took the car to the police station where 4 cops looked at it and they did not find an AirTag in there. And she also says that she was not able to press to play the sound, which is kind of weird to me because it seems like if you can't play the sound, then maybe it's not an AirTag actively with you anymore. So that tells me that maybe it could have been like a family member's AirTag. She mentioned how her sister took her car to the police station, for the cops to look at it. So maybe she's with her sister this whole time and she has an AirTag, and maybe that's what's tracking her and she doesn't realize it. Just keep in mind, guys, that can happen. Like if you're with somebody with an AirTag, it could show up as an unknown AirTag, with you, since it's not registered under your Apple ID. So that could be the case here. It could be, kind of getting sketched out for no reason. So that is one thing to keep in mind that can happen. But again, always, if you're in Find My and you get that unknown alert, play the sound. Always play the sound first. Don't freak out yet. Play the sound and make sure it's actually somewhere hidden where you are. And again, if this happens to you and you find an AirTag where somebody has potentially been stalking you, what you need to do then is just push down on the AirTag and spin it and then take the battery out. Once you take that battery out, nobody's able to track you. So that is the thing I would do if you are in that situation. And that's what Apple advises you to do as well. And then I did also want to mention that thankfully Android now has this feature. So Android phones can now detect unknown AirTags moving with them without the need of a third-party application. And this is just in Android 6.0. So a nice update for Android users as well. It's good to see kind of Samsung or Android and Apple working together on something like this. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, as always, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for more Apple news just like this. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.